Hello everyone, this is Dr. Whiting and welcome to part 4 of Cheating Death 2022. We begin this segment with a discussion of stress. And I have said for 40 plus years that stress is the cardinal or original cause of all disease and disorder and even discomfort in the human body. There isn't one factor of the human body that is not negatively affected by excess stress. Your brain, your memory, your nervous system, your digestion, your heart rhythm, your circulation. The list goes on and on and on. Digestion can go completely awry when you're under excess stress, to the point where you really can't even eat at all. Our concept of stress has changed with each passing decade, and that's because our society, our lifestyle, our self-created nonsense in many cases has added continuously and without abatement more and more stress in our lives. If you think about what life was like 40 or 50 years ago, if you have been around that long, life was much simpler then. And yet, at that time, life was much more complicated than it was 100 years ago. So, as society evolves, and as demands upon all of us continue to increase, stress rises and rises and rises. Now, the human body is very well equipped to handle stress in what we would call normal amounts. And I know normal is a relative term, but we get our stress management internally, biochemically, from our ancient ancestors. And we call that the fight or flight syndrome. And what happens is that when our ancestors were out in the woods hunting with their bow and arrow or their club or their spear, and they came across an animal that was too big for them to overcome, they had a choice to make. And that choice was either stand and fight or run. So hence fight or flight. No matter which choice was made, the body instantly and within a fraction of a second secretes powerful hormones that help us to either fight or flight, either to defend ourselves or to run away like crazy. And those hormones include adrenaline and a variety of other hormones which are responsible for increasing your sharpness of your vision, increasing heart rate but decreasing blood pressure, so that if you're injured, you'll likely not bleed to death. And a whole lot of other changes occur. And this is okay. This is what the body was meant to do. However, when this fight or flight syndrome, this state of being, occurs repeatedly, dozens and dozens and dozens of times a day, most often in a non-required state, and that overloads the body and leads to multiple false alarms within your chemistry. Because during the day, we get anxious about a wide variety of things, and they have no basis of fact whatsoever. And so when that same mechanism occurs, powerful hormones circulate in your bloodstream. And it's a false alarm, which means your body gets ready to react, to fight or flight. And there is no flight and there is no fight required, because it's a false perception. Over time, this exhausts the stress response cycle, especially the rebound or recovery stage. And when that occurs, we oftentimes begin to experience bouts of anxiety, nervousness, even panic attacks for absolutely no reason whatsoever. There are a lot of causes of stress in our life. External causes: work, your job, your family, pressures of the family, responsibilities, traffic jams driving to work, lack of exercise because you're just too tired to exercise when you finally get done with everything else. And a lot of the external factors that can lead to our stressful day are out of our control. You can't control the traffic jam. All you can do is be with it. You can't necessarily control all the stresses of your job. You can't necessarily control all the stresses of your family. You can modify them. You can balance them, but you can't necessarily eliminate all of them. Then we have internal stresses, and internal stresses make up, in many people, at least 50% or more of the stress response within their body. And some of the things that affect that would be not being in the present moment. We are either worried about the past or we're worried about the future. But we're very rarely living in this moment. And yet this moment is the only one we have. The past does not exist. The future hasn't arrived yet, so it technically doesn't exist. Only the present moment exists. And yet, in spite of that, we rarely are in the present moment. And that's why people stumble, fall, cut themselves, make all kinds of mistakes at work and at home, because they're not in the moment. They're not here where they are. They're thinking about the future, or they're thinking about something in the past. And generally, as we age, we tend to live more in the past. And that's not particularly a good thing. That can produce melancholy, depression, regret, and all kinds of other nonsense that really doesn't exist anymore. Younger people tend to live in the future. They tend to project into the future. What am I going to do? Am I going to go to college? What am I going to do for a profession? Am I going to get married? Will I have children? Etc., etc., etc. And so living in the future produces anxiety, serious anxiety, which can lead then to fear and panic attacks. If we can just learn to be in the present moment, it is amazing how a huge percentage of our stress disappears. Another cause of stress internally is prejudices and beliefs. You hear these people who believe something for no other reason and no basis of fact other than they choose to believe it. They just choose to. And they tend to get all worked up about their prejudices, their beliefs, their thoughts, and they, as time goes on, their likes and dislikes increase in number and intensity, and this all produces internal chemical changes, and those chemical changes can lead, directly or indirectly, to disease and disorder. The stress response cycle that we've been talking about, things occur, and I touched on them already. The endocrine hormones are either under or overproduced during the stress response cycle. Cortisol, one of the stress response hormones, is produced as a result of adrenal exhaustion. You need cortisol, but you don't need cortisol to excess. And when your adrenals become exhausted, they are the glands, the stress glands, and they have to go into high gear every time you're under stress, whether that stress is real or whether it's perceived. The body doesn't know the difference. And as this process continues, further adrenal exhaustion takes place. This causes the adrenal glands to do lots of things, but one of the more obvious things is excess cortisol, which causes weight gain, especially around the midsection. So, the standard medical approach to stress management is tranquilization, drugs. Drugs like Valium, Xanax, and a host of other chemicals are very effective, at least for the short term. But they have some negative side effects. They slow metabolism, they increase appetite, they cause weight gain, and they can be habit-forming or even addictive. And over-tranquilization for prolonged periods can lead to the opposite of what you're looking for, and that's depression. Antidepressants have the same pathway as above, and the other answer, which perhaps has considerable value, is psychotherapy, talk therapy. Sometimes you just need somebody to listen to you and help you sort everything out inside your head. The alternative approach is quite different. We encourage people to exercise because exercise increases endorphins. And endorphins are the feel-good hormones as opposed to the anxiety hormones. So by increasing exercise and increasing endorphins internally, you are then in a position to offset the stress hormones much more effectively. Diet, we recommend eliminating refined carbohydrates and concentrating your carbohydrates to complex, such as whole grains, vegetables, and so forth. But eliminating refined carbohydrates, eliminating junk food, sugar foods, etc. Because those high carbohydrates, those high sugar-forming foods, tend to actually contribute to the stress response cycle indirectly. And then we have targeted nutrients that we use. Vitamin C, B1, B2, B12. B12 is often considered the nerve hormone, or nerve vitamin, so it is extremely important. But there's one that's of equal or more importance, and that's a B complex nutrient called pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid is so essential in the stress response cycle to protect your adrenal glands from exhaustion. When you're under extreme stress, as an example, your body can utilize 40 to 60 milligrams of pantothenic acid per hour. The RDI, or now the DV, daily value for pantothenic acid, is 60 milligrams for the whole day. So you can see that we're nutrient deficient when it comes to living our high-stress lifestyle. Diabetes and its causes. There are two types of diabetes. Type 1, which is juvenile onset, it's hereditary, and the individual is insulin dependent for life. Then there's type 2, which is non-insulin dependent diabetes, and it accounts for at least 90% of all the diabetes cases worldwide. It is primarily dietary induced, although it does have hereditary origins. But it can be easily controlled through diet, exercise, and nutrients. Excess carbohydrates from the standard American or standard industrialized diet is the #1 cause of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Also, when we look at the needs of the diabetic, specific nutrient deficiencies become very obvious. The standard medical treatment for diabetes begins with oral medications. And the oral medications, with the exception of one, are designed to basically stimulate the pancreas to produce more insulin. The only exception to that is metformin, which is designed to control the conversion of proteins to glucose in your liver. Body weight should be normalized. That should be your primary goal through diet. And ultimately, when the oral medications fail, medicine then recommends insulin by injections. Keep in mind that almost every single type 2 diabetic has adequate or excess insulin production already. And it is the high levels of insulin that are causing the elevated blood sugar and hence the disease. Giving insulin by injection or even using oral medications that increase insulin production is slow and steady suicide, because it is the excess insulin that's causing all of the damage internally by driving your blood sugar increasingly higher. And funny enough, when you go to the doctor, this is slowly changing, but oftentimes doctors and especially dietitians recommend a diet that is relatively high in carbohydrates, as much as 60%. Fortunately, that is slowly changing. What you need to realize is that the standard medical treatment, for the most part, does not address the cause of type 2 diabetes, which is excess insulin production due to damaged insulin receptor sites. At our research institute, we use a diet of controlled carbohydrate intake, oftentimes greatly reducing carbohydrate intake severely, at least in the beginning. This causes weight loss, and the more excess weight you lose, the more normal your blood sugar will become, because your insulin receptor sites work better. And once we improve insulin function, you need less insulin to do the job, and less insulin production translates into lower blood sugar. Exercise. Exercise increases insulin sensitivity by activating the insulin receptor sites in the muscle cell. Specific supplements that we use include chromium, vanadium, aspartic acid, bilberry extract, cinnamon, alpha-lipoic acid, and bitter melon. And these nutrients have been shown to be extremely helpful in helping the body to increase insulin sensitivity, and that is the name of this game. I'd like to remind everyone to like our video. Please subscribe if you have not already, and please invite others to subscribe to our channel, because you can tell when we talk about something that might really help their life and even change it for the better. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add them below, and we look forward to the next chapter. When we return in part 5, we will be talking about bone loss or osteoporosis.